the challenges, one of the challenges that is constantly coming up in conversations as we have leadership for women coaching, one of the challenges that is constantly coming up is the issue of being trapped in operations or being operational or being stuck in firefighting versus focused leadership. So today we just want to focus on exchanging knowledge, but also sharing experiences on these sort of challenge that women experience. My name is Dr. Mavis Majura. I'm an adult development leadership psychologist. I spend most of my days in different organizations discussing human dynamics, whether as facilitator, but also as a leadership coach. And as mentioned, really passionate about leadership for women in the past 2 to 3 years because of the dynamics that I've noticed that are constantly coming up that has really steered me as a woman to really continue to support women leaders and organizations for our own success. So without wasting more time, let's get into what we need to discuss today. And as I mentioned, the title is how do we move from firefighting to focused leadership? Firefighting to focused leadership. And the question that I want us to lead with for this conversation is, are you leading or are you reacting? Okay. Are you leading or are you reacting? And as we go into this conversation, you'll be able to sort of, assess yourself and see where you are in terms of leading versus reacting. Okay. So how do you know that you're constantly reacting? How do you know that you're constantly reacting? So what does firefighting look like? So if you're a woman leader, you're in an organization, how do you know that you are firefighting? So firefighting all day feels like your team relies on you for everything. So they cannot make decisions. They cannot take ownership. They don't have autonomy or not exercising autonomy, right? So you end up having your team relying on you for everything. And then my work is not visible or rewarded. So you work so hard. But when you look at the amount of effort and hours you're putting, the energy and the emotional investment, the reward doesn't quite match the level of investment, if that makes sense, right? Or you're feeling like by this time I should have been promoted. If people could see what I'm doing and all I'm doing, by this time I should have moved up the ladder, right? But you realize, no, I'm working so hard, but my work is not visible. It's not being recognized. It's not being validated. And then you also see that, you don't feel safe setting boundaries. So when more work is being given your way, when you're being asked to take more tasks, you are not comfortable to say no, because sometimes no can feel like you are not a reliable person. No can have, different connotations, especially for high functioning women. It can feel like maybe I am, I'm not showing my loyalty. I'm not showing my commitment. So it can mean a lot of things. So you find then a lot of women leaders finding difficult to actually set the boundaries that are necessary for them to focus on, critical matters or to have strategic focus. And also this constant overproving. So with all the experiences, with all the years, you still sometimes find yourself having to prove you're worthy, to prove your credibility, to prove your competence, to prove your leadership, right? And this obviously is firefighting, because you're then never authentic. You're not really showing up in your authentic self. You're not showing up, it doesn't support sustainable performance, because if you look at this, all of this is almost like really demanding at an emotional level, where you probably could constantly feel some level of overwhelm, some level of anxiety, some level of resentment, right? Okay. So, and what is the hidden cost of firefighting, right? So you may have experienced these emotions, and I was talking about it now to say, what is it? I mean, when you're firefighting all day, what is the impact on your leadership, skill set and mindset? So the hidden cost of firefighting is drain. So then you constantly feel tired. A few conversations I've had with some women leaders, it's already the second month into the year, and someone was saying, I do feel I have the energy of November already. I have the energy of November already. And that was interesting for me to say, it's the second month, right? And if you have the energy of November in February, what's going to happen to you between March and October? what is going to sustain you between March and October? So if you're constantly feeling drained, the result is obviously guilty. You're not going to get to the things that matter the most, whether it is spending time with your family, whether it is spending time with your spouse, or other important commitments for yourself. You won't get time to get to those. And when you're not getting time to get to those, you start to feel guilty. And also you can start to feel resentful, right? For if the team is not picking up the slack, and you're constantly picking up the slack after them, right? You can start to kind of feel this resentment, right? And if you are doing so much work that is not rewarded or that is not being validated, that can also generate resentment, right? And then the result, obviously, when you're constantly experiencing negative emotions are not recharging. They are draining mostly, right? So you become exhausted both at home and at work. So the result is fatigue. The result is constant tiredness, right? Constant tiredness that you then begin to experience. That is the cost, the hidden cost of firefighting. But let's go into this quick Menti so we can see where we are. So I'm just going to share a Menti here that we can just quickly check in and see, is what I'm talking about something that other people or that you guys as women leaders are experiencing? Is what I've just shared now something that you experience? So I'm going to share a Menti now. Okay, so please get ready with your smartphones so that we can engage on this Menti, the first question. So we've got a first question here that I have asked to just check if what I'm sharing is something that you guys experience. So if you can go to menti.com. So menti.com, I'm going to just share now, put it into a presentation mode if you give me a moment. Okay, so start presentation so that you can have a look at it. Okay, let me know if you guys can see it. So the Menti, there's a QR code there. So menti.com. So from what I've shared, which statement resonates most right now? Okay, you've got the QR code, but you also have menti.com, and the code on there is 27990398. Okay, and the question is, which statement resonates most right now? And there's different statements: emotional exhaustion. Okay, which statement resonates right now? Okay, which statement resonates for you right now? Okay. Okay, which statement, as a female leader, which of these statements is resonating for you? Where are you now? Where are you now as a female leader? Okay, so carrying ownership, firefighting all day, overproving, emotional exhaustion. Okay, where are you as a female leader right now? And it might not be, you might not be in these places, and that's okay. So I didn't have an option of not any of these. I didn't have an option of not any of these, but it's possible also that you're not experiencing any of these. But it's interesting to see what's coming up: firefighting all day, carrying ownership, overproving, emotional exhaustion, and that is domineering. That is domineering. Okay, all right, guys, we move on. Thank you so much for this. We move on. So we'll come back again to this Menti. So we'll come back again to this Menti. So I'm going to push back to our presentation. Thank you for sharing. And I hope you can just really look at that feedback or the experiences that other women leaders are having and think about what does this really mean then in terms of leadership sustainability, but it's also in terms of personal sustainability as we lead. If we're constantly experiencing emotional exhaustion, what is the impact on our leadership effectiveness? What is the impact on our leadership effectiveness? And here's what happens now, the trap, right? So you are firefighting all day, but you get to a place where it starts to feel like responsibility, right? You start to feel like, okay, I have to firefight, because if I don't firefight, maybe you feel things will fall apart, right? And also the challenge is that this is what firefighting does. Firefighting seems to give an impression of you are getting immediate results, right? So it gives you an impression that you're getting immediate results. It creates temporary control. So you are in control temporarily, right? To just sort of firefight or get rid of that particular issue. And then it gets you stuck in reactivity, if that makes sense. Okay, so it proves competence, and then it also builds dependency. So you start to depend on that cycle of reactivity, but also the other people around you. Then just know who's the person who's going to run when things go off, right? Who's that person that they're going to run to when things go off? So it then makes you feel like, oh, I'm responsible, I'm needed, right? I'm significant. Okay. So you can get trapped into that. And then it becomes a habit, right? You rescue people, right? They praise you, you feel relief, you repeat again, you continue to rescue them. So you get into a pattern that becomes an identity, right? You get into a pattern where really firefighting has become an identity. It's become a lifestyle for you. It's become a way of life for you. Okay. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You rescue, you get the praise, you relieve, you feel the relief, you repeat, and then behavior becomes identity. Behavior becomes identity. So if you're operating in reactivity, it might not just, it's not for a season. It might be, it has become a way of life. It's actually become a lifestyle for you. Okay. So interestingly, we know that whatever you repeat, you become. So that link between identity and behavior, repetition, whatever you repeat, you become, right? You don't work overtime once and you're called a workaholic. It's repetition, spaced repetition over time. You don't drink once in a while and get called an alcoholic. It's spaced repetition, regular repetition, right? So we become what we repeat. So if you look at it, your habits right now, what are you repeating and what are you becoming? Right. So first you make your habits, then your habits make or break you. First you make your habits, then your habits make or break you. And sometimes we're not intentionally making those habits. We're being made by the system that we're operating in, right? So the system is giving you a bait to rescue people. The system is giving you a bait to get stuck in reactivity. So you make those habits, and then those habits can begin to break you. So if you look at the emotional exhaustion, right, that's not sustainable. So you are breaking emotionally if you look at that, right? It can't sustain your leadership effectiveness. It cannot sustain your health even. Okay. It cannot sustain your relationship because there's a downside where if you're constantly feeling emotionally exhausted, for the relationships that matter, you no longer have capacity for them. You no longer have capacity for them. Okay. And then this is then what happens. You get into what we call an identity lock-in, right? You're no longer just helping, you become the strong one. Yeah, you lead from cortisol, you lead from adrenaline, you survive on adrenaline, right? You're the strong one. Everybody runs to you as the strong one. So it becomes an identity. You feel that if you're not being that strong one, then you're letting everyone down. But the strong one it's actually letting itself down. So the strong person stuck in reactivity, stuck in emotional exhaustion, and still not acknowledging that, feeling that I am the strong one, even when you know that you're experiencing emotional exhaustion, right? What does that then mean? It means you are now locked into the reactivity. You are locked into the fighting as an identity, okay? And this is not a time problem if you look at it. So we would probably talk about time scarcity. I don't have time. There's not enough time. So we begin to think that maybe it's because there's not enough hours in the day. But I always tell people we all have 24 hours in a day, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. How come other people are able to have strategic focus in the same 24 hours? How come other people are able to accelerate goal achievement in the same 24 hours, right? So it's not a time issue. We don't have time scarcity, right? We have a pattern problem. Okay. So once you lock into the identity, once you develop the habits, they become patterns, and they're not only patterns that are, just a repetition of behaviors. They get locked into your nervous system, right? Your nervous system gets so used to operating from anxiety and overwhelm that when you are not doing that, you feel like something is not right. That's why when you take a break, when you take a break or when you take leave, you can't sit still. You feel guilty for resting, right? Because your nervous system doesn't know that anymore, doesn't know safety. It's used to operating from anxiety. It's used to operating from overwhelm, right? But this also signals that if you're constantly operating from overwhelm, you start to feel guilty for resting. You have reached what we call an identity threshold. You have reached what we call an identity threshold. What that means is that this way of operating is not sustainable. Okay, so something needs to move, something needs to shift. This way of operating is not sustainable. And the unfortunate part is what happens under pressure. When you're under pressure, you go to the familiar. So our environments are constantly changing. Our environments are constantly bringing pressure in our direction, right? And then you are wired a certain way of reactivity. So what do you do under pressure? You revert to reactivity. Okay? So the brain chooses what is familiar. And what is familiar is I'm constantly rescuing. I'm constantly firefighting. So it has become familiar because it's become an identity, right? So instead of the brain choosing something different, it goes back to what it is used to, even when you know it doesn't sustain you, right? Even when you know it's not sustaining you, okay? So when you look at the identity threshold, what is that about? It means if you're operating from overwhelming reactivity and you're emotionally exhausted, your current leadership identity can no longer carry you. Okay? Your current leadership identity can no longer carry your current demands. Your current leadership identity can no longer carry your current demands. So you have two options. Yeah? Leadership identity is not carrying current demands. You have two options. Okay? And the quick and easier way is to overfunction. Let me work harder. And this is what we do, isn't it? So we go to the familiar patterns, like, let me put in more effort. And when you start putting in the more effort, you get trapped again into the very thing that we are saying is not sustainable. So you get trapped in reactivity, okay? But the second option is, how do you evolve your leadership identity? The second option is evolving your leadership identity. How do you evolve your leadership identity? Let's go back again to our poll. Let's go back again to our mentee. I'm just going to pull it up. And then let's just check in from what I've just shared. Does any of this resonate, right? Does any of what I've shared with you resonate? Okay, I'm just going to share again the mentee. If you give me a moment. Okay, and in the chat box as well, please give me feedback. Is any of what I'm sharing resonating with you? Is any of what I'm sharing resonating with you? Please, in the chat box. Also, your comments. Your response to this content that we are engaging in. Okay. So our next one is, when pressure rises, I tend to. Our next question on the Zoom. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. Let me just check if it's sharing. Okay. Okay. When pressure rises, I tend to do it myself. Okay, there we go. Delegate strategically. Well done. Okay. So look at that. Do it myself. Look at that. Avoid conflict. Withdraw. Look at the do it myself. Yeah. The brain locking in to overperformance. Yeah. Look at that. The brain really overlocking into the identity pressure. Okay. So we get trapped in that. Okay. Right. Work harder. Okay. All right. Very interesting. So we can see what the brain is actually doing here. We can actually test for ourselves that what I'm sharing, is it really true? We can test this for ourselves. Is what I'm sharing really true? So goes to the familiar. So thank you to the ladies, or well done to the ladies, that when pressure rises, you tend to delegate strategically. But look at the majority of us where we sit. Yeah, look at the majority of us where we sit. Okay, all right. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, all right. We move on. We move on. Okay, just looking at your charts, yes, definitely. Maybe we have the slideshow as well. Makes perfect sense. Okay, this is your response. Okay, I'm going to share my presentation so that we carry on with this conversation. So yes, so now you are doing it yourself. You are over-functioning. And then as you're doing that, what is actually happening in terms of, your leadership? What is happening in terms of your leadership? So 5 things happen if you start to do it yourself and you start to overfunction, which is the majority of us. 5 leadership breakdowns, okay? The first is focus. So you're most unlikely to be focusing on having strategic focus. You're just now trapped in operations. Second is the organization. So you no longer have a system that works where each person owns what they own and you own what you own, and we all are able to bring this together. So it breaks down the system, okay, or the organization. And the next is the productivity. So much as you are now the person who's doing more, what happens to the rest of the team? Okay, communication and developing key people. And let me get into this one by one. So breakdown in focus, what happens? Busy but not directional. Okay, so you're not very busy, but you're not strategic. Okay, so strategies postponed, the key things, high payoff activities in your role, you postpone them, you are trapped in the operational matters. And everything now feels urgent. So you're not able to now say, what is urgent? What can be delayed? What is not so urgent? So everything now feels urgent. So you get trapped in that. So you lose focus, right? You lose clarity of focus. And then the next one is the breakdown of organization, okay? So you become the system, right? You become the one everyone and everything is dependent on. And what does this do? It creates decision bottlenecks, right? And then ownership blurs. So if you're doing everything, who owns what? Okay, who's accountable for what? Because then you're creating this kind of dependence. So the system, the organization breaks down, right? We're supposed to have a team where this person is responsible for that, that person is responsible for that, I'm responsible for that. But now it's blurry because I'm in that person's role, I'm in that person's task, I'm reworking that what that person has done. Okay. And then breakdown in productivity. So high effort, but low leverage. So you're putting in more hours, right? You're putting in more effort. You are redoing preventable work, okay? It's work that could have been done by someone. So you are losing hours for effort that could be directed towards strategic, focus, okay? So then you're putting in more hours. So I always talk about you can put in dollar time to 50 cents jobs, and you can be very busy throughout the day. Right? If you look at what is your hourly rate to your organization, and you look at the tasks that you do day to day, is all of those tasks worth the hourly time you're paid for? Yeah. When we start to do everything, we are even taking 20 cents jobs and we're doing them in hourly, in 100 Rand time. Right? That is what happens. Okay. So high effort, doing a lot, but not strategic. Low leverage. You're not making the traction. You're not making the impact. You're not making strategic influence, if that makes sense. Okay. And then boundaries feel risky. So in this case, remember to set boundaries is you need self-regulation. But when you are emotionally exhausted, you have no capacity for self-regulation. So what happens? Your authority softens. Where you're supposed to be holding people accountable, you no longer have capacity for holding people accountable, right? So your authority softens and voice shrinks in leadership rooms. So when you get into a leadership room where you're ideally supposed to be, communicating the value add that you have, you start to experience the self-doubt because, you feel the emotional exhaustion you have, but also you've been focusing on the operational matters. You have not been focused on strategic, you've not been focusing on strategic issues. So your voice shrinks because you then now feel you have nothing to contribute in this room. You doubt your own contribution, or you've not had time to package properly your contribution because you're stuck in operational matters. Okay, so that becomes a trap. And then breakdown in developing people. So if you have a team, you're managing people, one of the strategic focus is coaching people. You need to coach people to run the show. But if you're constantly operational, guess what? You carry the ownership. Your team does not stretch. Your team is not empowered. It is not coached. Your team will know that, Marilyn is going to do it. Let me just, let me just not take myself too seriously. Marilyn will rework it. And then Marilyn will prove right. We'll take it and rework it. Hey, Marilyn. So you become the indispensable but stuck, right? You feel like you are indispensable, but you're very stuck. You're not influencing strategically. I had a session yesterday, and it was a DEI conversation that I had with one of the leading universities. And it was interesting to notice that in their in their EE reports, women are trapped in the middle management. Very few women are advancing to the senior level. Right, trapped. And I was laughing with them, and I said, in my village where I grew up, you had animals that helped you to do the chores, like your cows or your donkeys, or whatever animal you had. And I remember that the donkey was always at work. It will come from the field, it will go and fetch water. It was always on, because it's the hard worker. It doesn't break too easily. So I laughed with them and I said, who will promote a donkey? Because when we promote a donkey, who's going to do the work? So if you have presented yourself as the donkey in the organization, we will keep you there because you're the one that's doing the work, right? And some of the conversations that I've been having across industry, just really to understand this dynamic around leadership for women, one of the gents that I was speaking to says he hires women because they're hard workers. I was like, yeah, okay, there we go. Right? So we get trapped into this dynamic, right? We work very, very hard. And then, we are not, experiencing the strategic sort of influence that we want. We experience raw overload. And let's do another Menti. So I'm sharing another Menti now. Let's do another Menti. And just let's assess what I'm talking about. Is this really real? So which leadership area is costing you the most? Which leadership area is costing you the most? Developing the team. Okay. Which leadership area is costing you the most? Which leadership area is costing you the most? Okay. Which leadership area is costing you the most? Okay. Which leadership area is costing you the most? Okay. Developing the team. So you no longer have the time and the space, right? No capacity, because that requires also a lot of self-regulation, requires a lot of bandwidth to be able to have those conversations with people, a lot of bandwidth to have those conversations with people. Okay. All right. So priorities. So the priorities fall off the wayside, or you try to do those when you're at home in the night, right? The whole day was filled with something else. You go home, then you start to look at your priorities, right? And when you're giving your priorities the least of your energy, what is your success rate? Right? You're giving your priorities the least of your energy. What is your success rate? What is your success rate? Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. So we can see where we are in terms of our experiences. Thank you for sharing this. Okay. All right. We move on. Let's move on. Okay. So the real question is, it's not a capability issue. You don't have a competence or capability issue, right? This whole thing is not a capability or competence issue, it's a capacity issue, right? It's not competence. There's nothing wrong. We're not incompetent. We're not incapable. We just lack capacity, right? So how do you then build that capacity, right? You cannot build capacity from knowledge alone, right? So there's a process. You need to transform yourself, because remember what we said, you're already trapped in an identity. If you're experiencing all the things that I shared, you're probably trapped in an identity. And you cannot change an identity by one touch, right? Because identity is created from space repetition, if you can see what I explained earlier on, right? It created from a space repetition. It's created from dominant emotions, where we said now your nervous system is locked into overwhelm. It is locked into anxiety. So if you want to transform this identity, you need to renew the input, right? You need to renew the input. How do you know what your current ideas are? So the renewing input is about getting new ideas or current ideas, just like this conversation we're having, but it needs to be over a spaced it needs to be applied through spaced repetition, right? So it cannot be just one touch like this. It needs to be applied through spaced repetition, because whatever you're experiencing now, it has been through spaced repetition. So to break it or to transform it, you also need spaced repetition to transform yourself, right? So if you think about your current narratives, when you say to yourself, when things are falling apart, when you experience pressure, you probably say, I don't have time, right? or you probably say, hey, this needs to get done. I have to do it, right? So your current narratives show the quality of ideas you currently have. So if we don't transform those ideas, we don't input new ideas, where, in fact, when we're going through the leadership for women, in our time management module, we talk about time is my friend. Time is not an enemy. There's no time scarcity. Time is abundant. 24 hours is enough. Yeah. If you are someone who believes in God like me, like if God gave us 24 hours, it's enough for all the things we need to do, right? It is enough. Okay. So, but when you start to experience time scarcity, energy scarcity, right? It is not an indication of the outer world. It's an indication of the inner world. So we need to then expand the inner world so that we can then experience the outer world in a different way. Okay. So renewing of input becomes important. What are you listening to? What are you taking in? And then application of behavior, right? Because you're currently repeating certain behaviors, right? So if we have to break this, we also have to then apply new behaviors, and that will then help in evolving your own identity, okay? And as I mentioned, when you're renewing input, when you're getting new information, right, regarding delegation, so some people be like, let me do it myself. So it means if you're doing it yourself under pressure, the narrative you have is saying that other people can't be depended on. You're the only dependent person. So if we don't rewire you, if we don't give you new input to change that narrative, you're trapped. You're trapped in your narrative. I don't know if that is making any sense. Okay. So you also need spaced repetition, because you're repeating this to yourself over and over again. You need spaced repetition of motivational input or quality ideas around some of the leadership aspects so that you can do what we call cognitive reframing, changing the way you think and feel. Okay. And we also do this through affirmations, through visualization as a process, so that we can start to change the behavior, right? And then if it's about boundaries, for example, right? We are applying boundaries in real time. Okay. Delegation is being done in real time, strategic influence in real time, and applied experimentation, right? So to rewire, to change these behaviors, you want to go through a transformative process that allows for you to do this, to apply your behavior, and you're being held accountable if you're applying the behavior. Because how many of us will be like, I'm setting that boundary, and even to today, you haven't set the boundary. Right? I'm having that conversation. Even till today, you've not had that conversation. You're trapped into the very thing that you want to move away from. So in evolving your own identity, you want to move from an over-functioning leader to an ownership-driven leader. Let your team own theirs. You own yours. Everybody's high-functioning, and we get to the next level of our own productivity. And what happens? We move away from the old loop. We move away from proving, from exhaustion and rescuing. Okay? We want to move away. We want to move away from this loop to a new loop, right? We want to create a new pattern. Renew, align, delegate, influence, and sustain, right? You want to renew yourself, align, be in that pace where you're like, I'm this leader that, drives results. I'm the leader that coaches. I'm the leader that cares, right? I'm the leader that, that generates energy. You cannot generate energy as a leader if you are exhausted emotionally. You have no capacity for generating energy. But as a leader, top 3 things: care, coach, and generate energy. But all of those require energy. You can't coach when you have so low energy. You cannot care when you are actually wanting to be taken care of. Because when you're emotionally exhausted, you need care. Unfortunately, then you don't even accept the care because of the way we are wired as women, right? We are used to being criticized. So even when we need the care, even when we need the help, even when we need to say, I want coaching, I need it, we resist it. Why do we resist it? Because we are so used to being undermined. Accepting help might feel like we are actually acknowledging that we are not good enough. So what do? We resist it. We run away from it. Okay. So when you have done the transformation, moving from the old loop to the new loop, what happens? You're leading a high-performing team. Okay. Your voice shapes direction. You show up calm and confident, and your achievements are visible. Okay. You have authority when you are in the room. Okay, let's do our, I think this will be our last Menti. Okay, let's just quickly do this last Menti. I'm cognizant of time. Okay, let's do this Menti. Be our last or second Menti. What outcome matters the most? So for you as a leader, what outcome matters the most? What is important for you? What would you like to see? Sustainable energy. Okay. As a leader, what outcome matters the most for you? What would you like to see? Okay, high-performing team, strategic influence. Okay, what would you like? Calm confidence, voice at the table. Okay, as a leader, what outcome matters the most? High-performing team. Okay, all right. What matters the most? As a leader, what really matters the most? Okay, high-performing team, sustainable energy. Okay, yeah, high-performing team. So that is interesting. Okay, so that is dominating. Okay, all right, guys, thanks for that. Thank you for that. Okay. So I mentioned this earlier on. Why does support feel threatening for women leaders? Women are used to being undermined. Support can feel like criticism. So when you say go for coaching, you're like, yeah, so you think I'm not good enough? I'm going to prove myself even better. I'm going to work even harder just to show you that I'm good, right? But this is a capacity protection and expansion issue. So when you say yes, it's difficult to do identity work on your own. It's difficult to do identity expansion on your own. That is very difficult to do. Okay. So it also allows you for strategic renewal, where, instead of under pressure and you're experiencing clarity that erodes, and you're experiencing decision fatigue, emotional labor compounding, and you want to be able to restore authority from a strategic renewal. Okay, strategic renewal, identity work. I'm expanding myself. I'm building my capacity. And what does that do? It then restores my authority instead of eroding it. It enrolls, it enlarges the authority instead of eroding it. Okay. If nothing changes in the next 12 months from now, are you going to be more strategic or more exhausted? Please use the chart. If nothing changes for you 12 months from now, are you going to be more strategic? Or are you going to be more exhausted? Please use the chart. Just a quick question, yeah. If nothing changes from where you are now, are you going to be more exhausted? Or are you going to be more strategic? Exhausted. More strategic, definitely. Exhausted. Okay, exhausted. Okay. If nothing changes from where you are now and how you're operating now, from what we have shared, if this resonated, if you see yourself in what I've shared, right? If nothing changes, where you're going to see yourself, right, from in the next 12 months. Okay. And I see dominant there, exhausted, more exhausted. I see dominant, more exhausted. Okay. So the cost of staying the same is time. Time continues to be scarcity. You start to continue to experience time scarcity. We already say time is enough, 24 hours is enough. But the mindset, the energy levels will determine whether you've got enough time or not. So time scarcity continues. Your health will take a toll. So obviously, if you're emotionally exhausted, 90% of doctors' visits is a result of not being able to manage negative emotions. So your health will take the toll. Visibility will also take the toll. So you will not be more visible. With no energy, no time to package, no time to communicate strategically, you're going to continue to remain invisible. Influence, your influence will also not be felt, right? You won't have capacity to influence. Just like most of these things, you need energy for influence. And then your presence also will be limited in the rooms that really matter the most. So sustainable leadership is not doing more work, right? When we talk about sustainable leadership, it's not like doing more. It's about becoming different. How do I change myself to be different? How do I change myself to experience emotional renewal, to experience identity alignment, and so I can experience sustainable performance? Okay. Just as a reflection as we end this, in the next 12 weeks, I want to be a leader who, how would you complete that question? In the next 12 weeks, I want to be a leader who. So in the next 12 weeks, what do you want to be a leader? How do you want to lead differently? In the next 12 weeks, you want to be a leader who? Okay. In the next 12 weeks, how do you want to lead? Set boundaries and reflect on leadership. Thanks, Lisa. In the next 12 weeks, you want to be a leader who does what? In the next 12 weeks, what are you committing to? Feels more in control. Okay. In the next 12 weeks, you want to be a leader who does what? Okay, has enough time to lead. Yeah, yeah. In the next 12 weeks, we want to be what? What do you want to be a leader? I mean, what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of leader do you want to be in the next 12 weeks? Okay, let's hear more from more ladies on the call. Delegates and mentors the team. Thank you, Smith. In the next 12 weeks, you want to be a leader who does what? Delegate tasks. Okay, thanks, Rendian. Alleviate the built-up pressure from my team. Yeah, okay, right? In the next 12 weeks, you want to be what? What do you want to be? You want to be what kind of a leader? What kind of a leader? Okay. Delegate strategically, allow growth team members where necessary. Okay. Delegate and mentor the team, assist team members where necessary, achieve goals, influence and create energy. Okay. Thanks, Annette. Okay. You want to be a leader who does what? Okay. All right. I think this is our last poll. Why did I think that that one was our last poll? Okay. So I'm just going to bring this up as our last poll, I think. I thought we had done all the mentee, but here we are. So the last one, what is one behavior you are ready to stop? What is the one behavior you're ready to stop? What is the one behavior that you're ready to stop? What is the one behavior you're ready to stop? Okay, our last one. What is the one behavior that you're ready to stop? Doing things myself, wanting to do it myself when we get stuck, be the go-to person, do it myself. Okay, what is the one behavior you are ready to stop? What is the one behavior you are ready to stop? Do everything myself, expending energy on things that does not grow me, firefighting and doing it myself, try to delegate and give myself more time to take the pressure off me. Okay, stop wanting to do it myself. Okay, what is the one behavior you're going to stop? What is the one behavior? Doing it myself. Okay, what is the one behavior you're wanting to stop? Doing everything myself, taking control. Okay, all right. What is the one behavior that you are ready to stop? Just see that it is interfering with your leadership effectiveness and keeping you get trapped into this identity, a survival-based identity. Okay, doing a lot and listen more. Okay, what is the one behavior you are now willing to stop? What is the behavior that you are willing to stop? Okay, taking control, procrastination, doing it, stop doing it myself. So interesting. Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. Okay. All right. So that is, what are we willing to stop as leaders so that we can move forward? And to end this conversation for us today, and time has just flown by, 45 minutes, but to end this conversation today, my invitation really is, how are you going to be able to reclaim your own time? How do you reclaim time? Because that becomes very important, okay? You need to be able to reclaim time. So reclaiming time becomes, sorry, am I actually sharing? Let me see. Okay. All right. So the invitation really is, you want to be, as a leader, you want to be able to reclaim your time. Okay. You want to be able to reclaim your time. You want to be able to reclaim your energy. You want to reclaim ownership and reclaim your voice. Okay. So as a leader, what are you going to do to make sure that you reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy, and you reclaim your own ownership? And when you do that, that is the only way you're going to move from firefighting to focused leadership. And you don't do this by working harder. You do this by evolving your leadership. Okay. You don't move from firefighting to focused leadership by putting in more hours, putting in more days, taking in more tasks. That's not how you do it. You do it by evolving your own identity, right? And to end this, it would be unfair for me to just really talk about how you evolve your leadership without kind of giving you the truth or sharing the truth, right? So we have a leadership for women transformative process. As I mentioned, this is great that we get the input, but to do the actual transformation, you need hand-holding, right? Only 10% of people can self-change. The rest of us, 90%, we need to be held by someone. We need to go through the transformative process with somebody else. So I'm just sharing this information that we have a cohort that is starting on the 9th of March, 2026. Over 10 weeks, we go through this transformative process together in a cohort with other women, just like we had conversation today, where you can have the community that supports you to go through your own identity evolvement, but also with the support of our tools that we have that has helped many other women leaders across the industry to actually transform their identity so that they can experience emotional renewal, identity alignment, and sustainable performance. And as we mentioned, starting on the 9th of March, 2026, the investment is 33,000. Installments are available. I think 3 months installments are available if you're interested. I will email you the recording of this particular presentation. With that, we'll also send an invitation for registration if you are interested. It's a 12-week structured identity and leadership transformation journey. It is designed for senior women leaders ready to be evolved beyond firefighting. You're done with firefighting. You want more presence, more voice, more strategic influence, more impact, more productivity. This is an invitation that we can go through this journey together. It doesn't have to be a lonely journey. And thank you for that. I can pause for 1 or 2 questions if there's any questions, and then we can move. I think we've done our 45 minutes. Was this useful for you? Any questions? Expand the inner world for the outer world to grow better. Mouthful. Thanks, Noctula, for that. This was insightful. Thank you, Mavis. Okay, all right. Thanks, Shadeen. Okay, thank you, Aisha. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Okay, information valuable. Thank you very much. It was great, needed session. Thank you, Mavis. Okay, thanks, Louisa. Okay, all right. Okay, thanks, Lizzo. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. Okay. All right, guys, I don't see any questions. I see that people appreciated the information. Let's go use this, right? Let's go use this. If you're not ready for the transformation journey, use some of these ideas, go and do the baby steps, right? Go take one idea, go and apply it and work through it, right? Thanks, guys, and all the best.
Mavis, thanks so much. As your only male attendee, I must tell you, I got a lot out of it myself. Oh, it's great.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you always for hosting
People,
us.
thank you so much for joining us today. Mavis will be writing to you shortly with details of the recording and the follow-up. And we look forward to having you with us on the journey as we go along. So with that, I'm going to end the meeting, and I look forward to bumping into you along the way. Thanks, Mavis. Cheers, eh? Bye.